All right. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Lifestyle MD. I'm your host, Dr. Angela. In this episode, we are going to be talking about stress. I have a wonderful guest with me today. My guest name is Dr. Carrie. She is a licensed naturopathic doctor, and she came into my sphere within the last couple of months maybe, and we've just started having conversations and found that we have a lot of alignment around areas of self-care and helping other people take care of themselves. We both have a particular passion for women, especially women of color, in terms of helping navigate this wild world of being caretakers and caregivers and just not doing such a good job taking care of ourselves. I'm going to go ahead and let her tell you a little bit more before we get into the topic.
So like Dr. Angela said, I'm Dr. Carrie. I am a naturopathic doctor and acupuncturist here in Grand Rapids. And so everyone asks me, what is naturopathic medicine? It is a healthcare profession that basically combines the wisdom of nature with the rigors of modern science. And so we are trained to diagnose, treat, and manage patients with acute and chronic conditions at the level, at more of a holistic level. So not just in concern with their physical body, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies as well. And so when I am working with my clients, my primary goals are always to try to identify the underlying cause of disease, to reestablish the foundations for health. And so that's things like diet and lifestyle support, and just in general support the body's natural ability to heal itself, because it can. Sometimes there are things that we do think, feel, eat that can stop it from doing so. In general, I totally love what I do. It's wonderful to be a guide with my clients on their health journeys and just see them learn tools and ways to manage and optimize their health and maintain that improved wellness long term. So
I just love all of that. I mean, the way you said it, I'm just thinking like we do the same thing just from a different angle, right?
Yes, definitely.
Beautiful. The human body is magnificent. It was divinely created with great ability, and food and is medicine, and taking care of yourself and movement is healing. So I'm so excited to learn more together as we go on this journey. Before we get into the topic, I want to invite listeners to be sure to leave a review, follow the podcast, follow me on social media, and I'm Angela Lifestyle MD on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook. All right, so Dr. Carrie, one of the first things that we wanted to cover is to provide an explanation on what stress is. I think inherently most people understand what stress is, but may not think about it in the same terms that you and I think of stress. So how do you define stress for your clients?
So any sort of a change that basically causes a physical, emotional, or a psychological strain on the body. And stress is normal. It is something that happens to everyone, and we definitely, because we're individuals, experience stress in different ways. But it is something that is totally normal. One thing that I always like to emphasize to people is there are two types of stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. And good stress is the type of stress that you feel when you are excited, let's say. You know, your pulse starts to quicken, your hormones surge. There's not like you're not feeling threatened, you're not afraid. It's more of almost just like a preparation for something to happen. So an example of a good stressor could be a test that you have to study for if you're in school, or let's say you're getting married and your wedding day is tomorrow, right? You're feeling those physiological changes where you're just excited and you're ready to go. That's a good stress. If we contrast that with a bad stress, that would be something, again, that is more threatening to the body. It may elicit fear or other negative emotions. But for example, let's say it is something like going through a divorce, or going through financial difficulty, as an example. I mean, from our textbook study of stress, right, they always bring up being chased by a bear. That's another, like, that's a classic example of a bad stressor. And so that's usually where I start when I talk with people about stress.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times I'll tell my patients that, we don't run from lions and bears anymore, right? But modern day stress is a little bit different. But yet the physiologic response is the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So when I think about stress, I also think about the fact that if you are chronically exposed to some sort of stress in a negative way, not only is it impacting you in that moment or for that period of time, but it's also going to lead you to develop some beliefs and some
Mm.
avoidances, because you mentioned fear, anxiety, triggers or feelings that could be triggered by that stress response. And so what some individuals may not think about is the fact that their tendency to avoid certain things or have fear to take certain action might be driven from some chronic prolonged stress exposure.
Hmm.
So that's kind of vague. I want to explore that a little bit more later, but that just reminded me of that. So in dealing with stress, have you had any clients in your experience that maybe didn't really have a comprehension of that coming in, or do you feel like most people really get it right away?
I think most people understand stress. I just think about life as a child after transitioning into being an adult.
Mhm.
I think that process introduces people to the idea of stress.
Yeah.
But I do have some clients that they can't perceive how stress is affecting their body.
Hmm.
So, for example, I just had a massage today. I love my massage therapist. I like to go and see her when I am stressed because I know personally that I carry my stress in my upper back. And I can always tell when I'm starting to get stressed out because it's always on my right side. But some of my back muscles will get tight and I'll feel the pain. And I'm like, all right, time to go visit Chelsea and let her love on my back a little bit. But
Hmm.
for some people, and I'm thinking of one client in particular, they don't feel the stress in their body, which is kind of hard for me to understand because I can so easily feel it myself.
Yeah, that's a really good example. That actually reminds me of a patient that I've been interacting with for a really long time, and she's got a lot on her plate and a lot of extraordinary stressors on her plate. And we've been exploring. She's been having some problems with lymphatic drainage. She's been having some problems with pain. She's been having problems with digestion, and we embarked on this extensive workup. I had her tap into some specialists, and when she came back full circle, I said to her, in one way, shape, or another, you realize that all of the testing has been negative. Doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with your body.
Right,
But have
right.
you considered the impact of this chronic stress and its role in what you're experiencing?
What did she say?
She kind of like paused for a second, and then she went, "Oh, yeah, I guess I haven't." Like, you're right.
And
And
it's so true,
it's
though.
so true. And I've introduced a lot of my patients to a book called When the Body Says No.
Mm.
And it was written by a family physician, Gabor Mate. And it has been amazing for a lot of my patients. She got the book and she's been reading it, and we did not even have to exchange words. I said, "So did you get that book?" She said, "Yeah, I did." And I could already see that she was a different person than the person I had seen a month before.
Wow, that's impactful.
Yes, yes. I mean, she's still dealing with some of her issues, but now she's not so overwhelmed by it.
Mhm.
She's
And
letting
that's
let
so
things go.
important to the awareness,
Yeah,
right? To
the
just even be
awareness.
aware that you
Uh,
are under stress makes a big difference in the way the body perceives it and the reactions that it you experience. So
Yeah, I think that's a problem for a lot of people, is that they don't even first they're not aware. So just help drawing attention. I feel like that's the most significant thing I'm able to do, is draw attention. Let's just face it, as a physician in traditional medical practice, I'm very limited in my time, right?
right.
Traditionally are able to do with patients. So at bare minimum, I try to make sure I connect them to that, the fact that stress is impacting them in some way. So kind of along the same lines, that patient is an example of someone who's had a lot of prolonged stress. And I've experienced a lot of prolonged stress. I mean, many of us have, and
Yeah.
I did not make the connection, even myself, of the impact of prolonged stress on my well-being until maybe in the last couple of years. And I know that stress has an impact, and I think I believed it, but I didn't believe it as much as I do now until I had that experience, or at least I had that awareness. So, tell me, from your perspective, how do you explain to people the impact of the prolonged stress, and in your experience, what kind of physical, emotional, psychological manifestations how has that shown up in your clients?
Totally. So, to just be frank, I think a really good example of prolonged stress is racism. metabolism. And as women of color and Black women, we experience different stressors, and they're definitely prolonged, right? Because you never know when somebody is going to come at you sideways. And so I usually, if it's applicable, I will start there. But a prolonged stressor is definitely going to, like you're saying, manifest physically, mental, emotionally, even spiritually. And so a lot of times with my clients, I will do what you did with your patient, which is we'll go see your PCP, right? Make sure that you're generally all is well. There's not a physical cause for the concern that they're coming to me for. And then, like you said, after they come back and they're like, well, everything was normal, like they didn't really find anything, then I say, well, let's talk about prolonged stress. Where do you experience stress, and do you recognize that it is a thing for you? It's a thing in your life, I should say. And so, that we'll talk about it. And then they just might randomly throw out a symptom like, yeah, I always get these headaches at the end of the week, right? And, I just pop my ibuprofen and I just keep going. But, I've never really thought about it. But now that we're talking about this, I wonder if the headaches are as a result of this prolonged stress that we have identified. Or, like you said, got all these weird GI things going on. I'm having diarrhea now all of a sudden, and sometimes it might vacillate to constipation. Like, I don't know what's going on with it. And so then again, we start talking about identifying their stressors, and then I will explain the connection or how it can be connected in the body, right? So we know that there's a gut-brain axis. If you are feeling emotional stress, that totally will translate into the gut. And it can just, it can be an instantaneous thing, and it doesn't have to be again, there doesn't have to be an organic cause for it all the time. But the other thing that I like to talk to my clients about in regards to prolonged stress is activation of the sympathetic nervous system. And when our sympathetic nervous system is engaged, right, basically our lungs, our heart, the blood vessels, our limbs, the musculoskeletal system are in overdrive. They're primed to escape from that bear, even though the bear is not the true stressor, like you were saying initially. And then the other thing that people neglect to think about in regards to sympathetic activation is that other organ systems are downregulated, right? So the immune system's downregulated, digestion is downregulated, urination and defecation, reproductive processes are downregulated because
I
you don't
can't get
need them.
pregnant when I'm under a lot of stress.
Hello. Hello. I wonder why, sir, you're having problems with erectile dysfunction.
Yeah,
Right?
right,
Because
right.
you don't need those processes to be engaged in order for you to escape the bear. That literally would just be an energetic drain for your body. So we definitely start to talk about that, and like I said, help people become aware of how their bodies respond to those prolonged stressors so that we can then start to address or manage their reaction to the stress.
Yes, 100%. I mean, everything you said, I just completely fully agree with. The interesting thing about stress and the impact of prolonged stress, I find that it's easier to tell a patient that once I've almost not really so much that I'm convincing them that it's not anything, and I hate to say that it's not anything medical because your body is responding. It is having an impact on your body. I don't want them to think that I'm telling them that it's all in their head.
Right.
That's not it. Your mind happens to have a lot of influence and control over your bodily functions, right? So, and
Right.
it's affected by your mind, but it's not all in your head. So it's like once I've ruled out things that make sense to rule out, then I've got their buy-in.
Exactly. Well, and we have to think about it, right? We're trained to think about the body, and the way that the body functions. Most of your patients and most of my clients aren't trained in the same way that we're trained. So if I've just got this headache all the time, oh no, I've got a tumor or, something is going on. And so the fact that you do take the time, of course, to rule out an organic cause, I think is so important to get them to understand and become aware of the fact that their emotions and their mental state totally can affect, the responses of their body physically as
Right.
well.
And it gives them peace of mind and comfort in being able to kind of accept that. And it's interesting, a lot of people just have this belief that it almost seems like there's no way it can quote just be stress. Right? Like stress is very powerful. Extremely powerful, right? So yeah, it's very important to kind of get people on the same page, because we are trained as clinicians and we're also trained as human beings in a modern society to always relate to something organic. And then, of course, there's got to be a pill for it,
Yep.
right? There's got to be a diagnosis, and if we can't, and I've got some patients that really hold strongly to that, despite all the negative testing, there's got to be some actual diagnoses. I mean, and there are rare instances where there might be something that we don't pick up right away.
Right. Right.
So I don't want to dismiss that completely. I always remain open to all possibilities.
Right.
When it comes to helping someone heal. Something else that I like to talk about with my clients on the coaching side is the fact that if you're under a lot of ongoing chronic stress that you first of all are not adequately managing your response to, and it's got a grip on you physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's hard. You can't really be your full best self, right? It's hard for you to engage in regular fitness, eat well, sleep well, do all the things that are necessary to be healthy and fit if you haven't addressed that part first.
Right.
Right.
So huge. So huge. And it just seems like common sense to me. But for many people, it like you said, the stress isn't even on their radar. Or if they at least acknowledge that they have stress, sometimes it's hard for them to accept the connection, and that it could be the stress. And then they're like, well, so what? Am I supposed to go get a massage every day? Or like,
right. Right. I'm just going to do quote self-care all the time, and then I'm going to fix it. And no, that's not how it works. And my episode that I released just prior to this one, I talked about deciphering who would be a good client for my coaching versus who would not be a good client. And I don't take people on for my advanced fitness coaching that haven't addressed that stuff. That's not our realm. They definitely need to have some help. But and I told a brief story about a woman who approached me that's in my circle who wanted to work on being more fit, and she kind of had the same mindset that I come across, where it's like, well, I can't fix this thing, whether it's this financial insecurity or this relational stress, so I'm going to focus on this other higher order thing. I'm going to focus on exercising, not realizing that you're causing more harm doing that thing that you perceive as healthy, because your cortisol is already high.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And now you're stressing your body physically.
Yes.
And your cortisol's even higher.
It's even higher. And now you're packing on abdominal weight as a result.
Yes,
and you wonder why it's not coming off.
Yeah, why am I not losing weight? Why don't I feel good? Well, that's why. Yes.
Sometimes good things, healthy things, great lifestyle habits can be detrimental, like you're saying, if people aren't in the right space to start doing it. And a lot of times, like you're saying too, we tend to go real hard on doing healthy things because they're healthy for us. But as one of my professors said in the very first day of our class, everything in moderation, including moderation. Sometimes.
Sorry. That's good. Might have to use that snort later. So, I mean, and also the interesting thing about fitness, exercising, eating well, is that's tactical. That's very concrete. It's, quote, easy to work on. Like I can find a workout regimen and do that. But fixing your thoughts, fixing your beliefs, addressing the emotions, that's hard work.
It is hard work. It's so true. And it's, like you're saying, I agree with you 100%. Everyone should have a therapist, but that therapist is still not going to do the work for you.
Oh, no.
You still got to do the work that the therapist recommends.
No, and in fact, I almost the other day I was going to look up, okay, what's the difference between a therapist and a coach? Because I feel like there's a lot of what I do, although I'm not a therapist. I mean, I do engage in a lot of things with both my patients and my clients that could be bordering on therapy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not, because I think people are going to be more successful when they're empowered.
Definitely.
Make the change.
Definitely. I think, and you don't even have to call it therapy. Call it counsel if you want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's so important.
Yeah, so for those of you who think therapy is a naughty word, a dirty word, find a counselor or find someone who can coach you through your challenges. Because if you don't like the word therapy, you just need to be empowered and shown the light, shown the way.
Yes. So impactful. That's all I can say. A therapist or a counselor or a coach is someone who is your dedicated person that you can do that with. And so sometimes sometimes just being able to talk about it fully and getting it off your chest is a great first step in helping to like understand what your feelings are, number one, and then two, to get it out of you. So that's one of the things that I'm always recommending to my clients is I feel like stress builds in our bodies like a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just keep ignoring it, eventually the pressure cooker is going to erupt, right? And unfortunately, it can erupt in some really serious ways. You know, it could be a heart attack. I have a client actually who was under a tremendous amount of stress and he ended up having a grand mal seizure. So, you know, it can be things that you can kind of deal with, but it can be some really serious things. And so I say all of that to say, if stress is building in you like a pressure cooker, and especially I have found this is so true for women of all races and creeds here in America, is the fact that our culture trains us to kind of stuff things, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
shut up, lady, and go back to doing whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Juggle all the balls, right? Be the mom and the wife and the partner and the you know, whatever you do for your job and whatever you may do extracurricularly. And just don't complain, you know, don't
Mm-hmm.
express. So anyway, I'm always
Yes.
telling people, get it out of you in whatever way, in multiple ways, but in whatever way feels
Yes.
comfortable for you, right? So the talking with a therapist or with a counselor, right? But like you're saying, even exercise, and it doesn't have to be that you're bench pressing all of this weight. Go take a walk.
Yes.
Right? You know, go to, you know what I've always wanted to do is go to one of those rooms, those demolition rooms where they
Me
allow you to
too.
break up. Go
Yes.
there. Like,
So we should do that
we
actually.
should do that together.
Ever.
Let's just tear some stuff up. But you know,
Yes.
the act of exerting is another way of purging all of this stuff out of you.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want to discourage people from engaging in physical activity when they're under stress. What I want to discourage is an over focusing on that and in replacement of dealing with the stress, right? Right. That doesn't excuse you from making sure you're doing the things you need to do to recover from whatever is going on in your life. Because for me, I know that whole pressure cooker analogy is great because if I don't move, if I don't exercise, whether it's walk, lift, lately swimming, if I don't do something, if I go more than a few days, I literally feel like I'm going to explode.
Feel it.
I feel it. I'm like, I need
Yes.
an outlet, and that is my outlet. I need to get that out. Another thing I like to do, a lot of people don't know this, is that I like to build and construct and make things. I like to do things with my
Mm-hmm.
hands. And so there was some wood that was on one of the businesses around the corner that's actually a wood business. They had free wood
Okay.
pallets and stuff, and I drove past it with my sons, like, free wood.
U-turn.
You turn. Well, I came back home and I grabbed my circular saw, I grabbed my little tool bag, I grabbed his glasses and my glasses. We went and cut some wood up
Oh.
and threw it in the back. And yeah, I mean, and I started ripping things apart. I'm like, oh, that felt good.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And so like those kind of things, and I think one big thing as a woman, and then women are I have a particular passion. I mean, I happen to be a woman, but I think I have a particular passion for helping women navigate this, right? We are always putting off our own needs,
Yes,
right? No matter
yes.
what you no whether whatever your roles are, whether you're a wife or a mom or an employee, a business owner, whatever, like it's ingrained to put yourself
Mhm.
off.
Just juggle it.
Just
Just
juggle
juggle
it
all the
off.
things.
Keep
Yep.
keep
Mm-hmm.
going, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
stop.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just need to stop and do what's good for you.
Yes.
Not even sometimes. You need to make that a priority.
Yes. A regular
Regular
habit.
regular habit, exactly, habit. So I definitely am much better about doing that. Again, talk about practicing what you preach. I started making that a priority. And one of the other priorities I made that was contributing to my stress is being present for my family.
Yeah.
And not being present was creating stress because I was trying to keep up with work all the time.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about not being present but I was like I was competing between these two obligations. Well, I had to decide which one was more important.
Yes. Yes.
Clearly, I mean, the answer is clear, but that's not how I was behaving in my
Right.
day-to-day action. So kind of when I talk to my clients about aligning your decisions with your values. So if my actions are reflecting that I value my work over my family, like, is that really what my value is?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we kind of like have led into this next point, which is what do you do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with chronic stress. Acute stress comes and goes.
Yep.
But this chronic stress, how do you help people navigate that? Like how do you fix it?
So you're never going to completely fix it, right? Because
Right.
stress is a normal part of life.
Right.
But what I help people to understand understand is you have to have tools. You have to have tools, multiple tools too, established so that you can purge, basically. For me, it's really all about pulling all of this stuff out of you that builds up. And it's really interesting. So I am a crier.
Mm.
It doesn't take much for me to start crying, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like I'm sad or whatever, but I have come to accept and realize that that's one of the ways that my body purges.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, when I do like feel it coming, I feel like a sensation, an energetic sensation, heat, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like it's coming up from the center of me.
Mm.
And it comes out of my eyes. And then once I'm done crying, like I don't feel that sensation anymore. It's literally like it's been, like I said, purged out of me.
Yeah.
So I talk to my clients about establishing multiple ways to purge and to help themselves, like you said, manage their response to stress. So I think of usually 4 or 5 different ways. Something physical, like you're talking about with the exercise, or even with you and your wood. But that also kind of overlaps with another area that I talk to women about. And I think this is different. This isn't something I always hear about, but sometimes, well, I believe we as women have a creative aspect to our makeup, right? And it's very well illustrated in the fact that we grow babies.
Mm.
And whether you have children or not, I do believe that there is a creative essence to us that needs to be
Oh, I love
cultivated,
that.
right?
Yes.
And so your woodwork, your building is creative.
Yes.
And so for women, that's another thing I talk about is what do you do that's creative? It doesn't have to be the typical, oh, I'm a painter or I sculpt or whatever. Like I said, for you, it could be, it's building. For some people, it's cooking. For other people,
Okay.
it's writing. Just something that you are using your creative juices and you're getting them flowing. I think that is just an awesome way for women to, again, kind of tap into our femininity, but also help purge the stress and deal with the stress.
Can I just say, I never heard it described that way. And talk about being a crier. That almost brings me to tears. That's beautiful. That's just amazing. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, keep
All
going.
of that, all of this is divine inspiration,
Yes,
or
amen.
divinely inspired, I should say. But so I said physical, creative, a mental, emotional way, right? So a lot of times people think meditation. Some people may do prayer. Again, it doesn't have to be. It is whatever resonates with you that allows you to be able to mentally get this crap out of your head, right? So it could be journaling. Really interesting. I just learned from one of my clients about Emmanuel journaling. I have not looked it up. Don't know
Oh.
what it is. It is in relation to Emmanuel from the Bible.
Hmm.
But there's just all these different aspects of and different ways to do these very common things. There's a woman that has, I can't think of her name, and if I can remember later, I'll bring it back up. But she has a practice that's called morning page, and
Hmm.
literally, it's you take 3 minutes, put it on the timer, and you just brain dump first thing in the morning. For some of my clients, I just call it brain dumping, and I usually recommend they do it at night before bedtime, especially for my ruminators, right, that
Yes,
are
I do the same.
laying up at night, or
Put
my
down
type
paper.
A. Yes, get it out of you, right? Or
Yes.
my type A people that have a 56 line list in their head. Get that trash out of your head and put it on a piece of paper or put it in your phone. Like, get it out of your brain. Let your brain rest.
Yeah, that's a physical manifestation or a physical example of you like actually physically removing from your mind and putting it over here and telling yourself you'll deal with it later.
Exactly. And you don't have to stress and think about it. It's right here with you, wherever you feel comfortable putting it. And when you wake up first thing in the morning, 9 times out of 10, it's still gonna be there.
Hmm. Oh, I love that.
So what did I say? Physical, mental, emotional, creative, spiritual, right? So again, this usually overlaps with a religious practice, whether it's prayer, but most religions, from what I understand, do kind of promote meditation. And so a lot of times I will tell people meditate first, or excuse me, pray first, and then set up a little time of meditation afterwards so that you can hear back from your creator or your higher power, if that is the sort of relationship that you have. Trying to think. Oh, and then the other thing is something that you can do in the moment. And again, for a lot of times this is breathing, right? Because everybody knows about box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing. But for me,
For those in the audience who may not know what those are, how describe that?
Oh, sure. So 4-7-8 breathing is inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7, and exhaling for 8. And then box or square breathing is literally inhaling for 4, hold for 4, or exhale for 4, inhale for 4, exhale helpful for. It's literally the same amount of time in regards to kind of measured, even breathing to help calm you down. If we're talking about breath in regards to a holistic approach, right? Our breath is a very easy way to kind of just calm things down and bring things back into center and to focus. Just
Mhm.
one thing I want to mention from a Christian perspective, which I am, God animated us through the breath. And so a lot of times I will tell my Christian client, breathe and think about realigning and reconnecting yourself with the Lord when during the times of stress.
Wow, I love that.
So the point of all of this is you just have to find multiple different ways to kind of help yourself come down from stress in many different scenarios. Because again, you can't always predict when stress is going to occur. You know, let's say you're in a meeting with your boss, you can't go run a lap around the building in the meeting.
Mhm.
You 9 times out of 10 can't like bust into meditation or like for
Mm-mm.
me, I like to color, so you probably shouldn't be doodling when you're talking to your boss. So, like, okay, this is where the breathing comes in. Let me just take a few deep breaths and try to recenter myself, or that. So that's what I do a lot of times with my clients. And then, like I said earlier, if people need more support, that's when I reach out to my resources. So let's find you a therapist that can help you with even more coping skills. Maybe you've had some trauma and you need some trauma specific therapy or some trauma specific solutions. So
Yes, that's excellent. I'm glad that you kind of touched on that because, a lot of these techniques are universal and can be used. But there's definitely going to be people in our circles in our community who need the extra level.
yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking, oh wow, this is probably why I feel so much better lately because I've been engaged in all of these.
Hmm.
So, physical is something that I've very rarely ever had a problem with. I love physical activity. I do find it difficult to make time for it if I'm not at ease, but if I'm also not making time for it, I'm not at ease too. So it's kind of a circular thing. So what I've done is I've redefined what I need to do to be physical. So instead of being very rigid and I have, telling myself that I need to work out for X amount of time or I need to do this many reps or I need to run 5 miles, sometimes I just need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something just like before we got together on this call, because I hadn't done anything yet today. It's a little bit scattered. I said, I'm just going to go for a walk run to the park and back.
How long was that?
It was 10 minutes.
Perfect,
Perfect.
right?
Yep. That's all I needed. It was good. Yes, I want to do more, and I'll do more with my son later, but that was great.
Yes. And like you said, you felt the benefits of just that tiny little bit of movement.
Yes.
Everything doesn't have to be this massive undertaking all the
Yes.
time.
Unfortunately, and then I think that's another thing that I often find myself reminding patients and clients of is it doesn't have to be a big production. And I had to learn that myself.
Yes.
I was always very rigid. It's got to be this way, but no, free yourself of
Oh,
that. Thank you.
yes.
And then the creative piece of it, we talked about I like building things with wood. I love cooking. I love sharing. I love sharing meal. And again, and I'll probably have to do an episode around making time for these kind of things. And I should be clear, you don't make time. You set aside time,
Yes.
right?
Yes. You cannot create more
You cannot
time.
create more time. And I often tell people if you feel like there's things that you need to do for yourself and you don't quote have time for it, then you're doing too much.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
hello, right?
It's so
It's
true.
so true. And we try to pack too many things on our plate because we think we need to.
Yes. Yes.
And then you're suffering as a result of it. Well, and then the mental, emotional piece of it, and the spiritual piece of it, I've gotten away from it recently, and then I can feel it. I can feel the difference. I started getting up in the morning, and it's funny that you said I would do exactly that. I would pray, I would meditate, then I would journal.
Yes. Oh, I like that.
Yes, and it was in a very maybe 10 minutes.
Yes.
Not
And I'm
much
glad
time
you
at
said
all.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
A meditation is not something that comes easy. It's a lot easier for me now. I've been doing it for a little while because you can require it's. And I tell my patients and my client, it's about slowing your mind down. It's about being present and recognizing your thoughts. You don't have to be perfect at it. You see the thought, you recognize it, you bring yourself back to your focus, your center. Like, and it's and it once you get comfortable with that, it just gives you a little bit more capacity to just manage what's happening in your head, right?
Yes.
So, and when I journal, again, I've never really liked journaling. One of my coaches talked to me about gratitude, and I've not spent enough time in my life being grateful, although I'm much better at it now. And I decided to just write down 3 things every day that I was grateful for.
Yes.
Sometimes I write more and I expand upon that, but at minimum, 3 things I'm grateful for.
Yeah. And one thing I encourage my clients to do with that gratitude specifically is go back. and read what you're grateful for.
Yes, absolutely.
Remind yourself.
Yes. These are things I try to encourage my clients. I haven't talked to them about the creative piece. I love that. I'm gonna have to steal that. But
Do it.
thank you. Thank you. No, we're all about helping everybody, right?
Yes.
I always want them to set aside that time just to be still, right? Just be present. And and like I'm also a Christian, and so my spirituality and being present with God is important to me. And so you kind of touch on, you can engage those last 3 points you had, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and breathing, all in that
All
meditation
together.
and prayer time. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
One other thing I just wanted to say is you beyond breathing for something that's like in the moment, it can be something even more simple, like engaging one of your other senses, right? So people love essential oils. I
Mm.
get that all the time. Nowadays they have all of these different types of jewelry that have like essential oil absorbing stone,
Oh.
right? So there's like necklaces or bracelets. I'm sure there's rings and stuff. But like, again, if you don't even have time to breathe, maybe you have your essential oil necklace on and you put your favorite scent on and you can just lift it up and sniff it
Mm.
for a few seconds. But that engaging of the sense of smell may redirect your mind from whatever the stressor is and
Mhm.
kind of, again, distract you. This is not, again, something that is going to help you purge, but it is something that will help you recenter in the midst of chaos. For example, I have a personal example. So I remember during COVID-19, thankfully I'm not a overly anxious person, but I remember when the shutdown happened, I remember walking into Meijer, people had their masks on and I could literally feel the anxiety in the air. It was
Mm.
almost palpable, right? Because this is the beginning of the pandemic. Nobody knows what's going on. There's all of this just news coverage and media coverage. There's no toilet paper, right?
Right? That was wild.
And so I did my shopping. I left and it's almost like it clung to the anxiety.
Mm.
And so the next time I went, I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't feel like this and I'm not going to take this on.
Mm.
So I had gone into my Bible. I was looking up scriptures about anxiety, and the scripture, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind, came to mind
Mm.
and really spoke to me. And so when I would go to the store, as soon as I felt that stuff or I saw people being very anxious, I would just repeat
Mm.
that scripture to myself, and literally just melted all of that away from me. Like, it's almost like a shield. It didn't touch me. And so I say that to say, think of a scripture, or it doesn't have to be a scripture. Think of a mantra. I'm strong. I'm powerful. I can do this, sort of a thing,
Right.
or whatever is necessary to help you deal with whatever stressors that you are constantly dealing with. Speak directly to the stressor. So if it's your boss, right, give yourself a mantra that will help remind you that the boss is just at the job and you are a strong woman and you can, you know what I mean? You can overcome
Yes.
whatever you're going through. These,
Right.
again, just very simple, or even a song, right? I don't know. You've got a favorite song and there's a verse in the song that really speaks to you. Put that in your head when you're going through something. So again, you can just help your mind clear out some of this stress and help you focus on whatever it is that you're doing. So,
Yeah, and another thing that as you were talking, I thought about touch and sensation, right? Like physical sensation. And a lot of people naturally gravitate toward that and don't realize that that's a stress coping mechanism for them. So, like for instance, my son, as a simple example, and my stepson, they both, when my stepson was younger and my younger son now, they will squeeze their hands, or my youngest will lay on the floor and just kind of like just be there, right? And just kind of like, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, you feeling all right? You good? Right? And then for
mm,
me, I like touching certain things, like and it can be soothing for me to have like
yeah,
a surface. And then of course there's the things that are out there like squeeze balls, and then for little kids often you got like the chew things. Like there's
yep.
a reason those things exist,
That's true.
right?
That's so true. I
So
didn't even think about that, but that's one. And like you said, it's almost unconscious for some people.
yes.
You actually have me thinking. I had a client with some really severe anxiety, and I remember she came to me, and her family members were mentioning that she had rubbed some of the skin off of her legs because that's how anxious she was, and that's how much she was using touch to try to soothe herself.
Mm.
But we've got all this wonderful clothes, and clothes feel good, like, or just give yourself a hug, or like you're saying, squeeze your hands. I think that's wonderful. I'm taking that from you.
Yes,
Thank
all
you.
right. Yeah, see, this is great. Beautiful. Back and forth.
Yes.
I think one of the things, and we're gonna kind of like work toward wrapping it up, is I think about we know we have these strategies, but one thing that I want to make sure people are trying to do is work on their mindset.
Mhm.
Right. And you can deal with the stress and its impact on your body and try to release that. So, like, not bottle it all up because stress creates feelings, and right, and creates fear, anxiety. You don't want to hold that in. And so, some of these strategies are help you to release those feelings, right? To not hold it in and bottle it up. But then, in order to minimize or reduce the frequency in which you experience those things, because some stressors don't go away, right? And I can think from just from my personal life and just growing up, I had a challenging childhood, and even into my young adult and teenage and years, and there were things in my life and going on I couldn't change, but they were always going to be there. And being able to change the mindset from even if it's simple as it's not your fault,
Mhm.
it's not your job to fix it,
Mhm.
right? Or recognizing your own limits.
Yes.
And
And setting some boundaries.
setting boundaries. Hello. And that setting limits, setting boundaries and recognizing your limits, the boundary piece, that's what a lot of my clients and my patients are. That's where they are. And
Yeah.
that's what they haven't done. And some are unwilling because they just don't see how it can be any different.
Mhm.
Maybe they
Mhm.
spent 40, 50, 60 years of their lives just saying yes to everything and doing everything for
Mm.
everyone. That's a stressor in and of itself,
Oh, totally.
a huge stressor. And I can't remember where I heard this. It was during one of my meditations, I think, or something I was reading, or I don't remember. I'll have to figure it out. But when given the choice between guilt and resentment, guilt being you feel bad that you didn't say yes to do something, for instance, to help someone, or resentment, resenting the fact that you did something when you knew maybe it was going to exhaust you or take away from something you need to do, right? Choose guilt.
Mm-hmm. And then, like you're saying, do some positive self-talk
Yes.
and reassure yourself that it's okay for you to prioritize yourself and that you had to say no.
Right.
And that saying no one time doesn't mean you can't say no, or excuse me, you can't say yes in the future.
Yeah, correct. And getting back to the title of that book that I mentioned earlier, I mean, really, it's a brilliant book, When the Body Says No.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we've spent so much of our life not saying no to the things that, and not putting up boundaries and creating safe spaces for ourselves, our body gets overwhelmed to the point where it just says no for us.
Mm-hmm. And it may be in a way that you don't want it to.
And it can be minor or it could be really profound.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
stress is implicated in increased prevalence of cancers, of autoimmune conditions,
Cardiovascular
vascular
disease.
disease, yes, dementia.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shortage of impact of stress. And so, and another thing, so I'm also lifestyle medicine certified, and I attended a conference a few months ago about nutrition, like a nutrition focused conference, and they were talking about genetics, and a lot of people talk about what's in their genes or what's not in their genes. And I hate to use a gun example, but what he said was your genes may load the gun,
Mm-hmm.
but your lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Pulls the trigger. Yes.
Yeah, yes. And I think I might have shared that with you. I love, love, love the analogy of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you have a genetic predisposition doesn't mean that you're doomed to experience all of those ailments.
Right, right. Your body has the ability to turn things on and turn things off.
Precisely. And then, we cognitively understand that, but trying to present that in ways that our patients and clients can appreciate that is so critical.
Yeah.
All right. Whew. All right. Just a quick reminder. I have a coaching program. I've already forgotten what I've decided to call it because I keep fluctuating my name, but I think I'm going with Fit Lifestyle Coaching Program right now, but whatever. And I'm actually not accepting active clients right now. But if anyone's interested in hearing more about it, they can talk with me, schedule a decision call, join the waiting list. I want to make sure that everyone understands how to find you again, Dr. Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
How people find you?
So you can find me at my website, which is vibrantwellnessmi.com, or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at C Denny. So CD as in David, E N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, IE, N as in Nancy, D as in dog, which is my first last name, or my first initial last name, and then my credentials, ND, at Instagram or Facebook, and actually TikTok, but I haven't started making anything
I've
out
been
there yet.
I've been trying to. I know I need to go there, but it's
I
too many things. Any
hear
final
you.
points you want to leave with the audience?
Just that, especially knowing your audience, just know knowing, I just want to emphasize that we are powerful as women.
Mm.
And that's evidenced by the fact that we can juggle and manage and do all of the things and be in all of the roles that we are in. And the only way that you can continue to be as powerful and effective is if you make sure that you pour into yourself. And so if you don't get anything out of this podcast, even though I don't know how you wouldn't,
But I hope you do.
please know that if setting aside time to take care of yourself will be beneficial for all of your endeavors, not just for you. And like I said, it'll allow you to be able to pour into and help all of the people that you help. And you deserve it. You deserve rest. You deserve self-care. You deserve to be empowered yourself. And so just please, if you don't think of me at all ever again, just hear my voice. And if you have the opportunity to take care of yourself, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day, try and make that a habit. And the research shows that when you take time for rest and you take time to rejuvenate yourself, you are able to perform better.
Yes, 100%. I mean, and I think it was during one of the sermons, and I'll kind of like tack on to that. God even rested.
Yes, I say that all the time.
Yes, right?
Oh,
And he's
because
our
people are like,
perfect example,
I
right?
can't take a day off. Well, really? Because God took the seventh day and
Right.
he rested the whole day. I'm not
Right?
even asking for that.
Exactly.
Can I get an
I
hour
mean,
of your time?
exactly. That's all I'm saying. So,
Yes.
you're no more important, or less important for that matter. So good. I so appreciate you.
So much for having me on. It's so wonderful. I love it when we talk because,
I
like you
know.
said, we're just so we vibe very well.
Yes, yes. I'm looking forward to many, 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 many more conversations, and I hope you'll join me for another episode. Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this podcast episode, and if you're interested in hearing more, follow and subscribe. All right. Till next time. Take care. Bye. This has been another episode of The Lifestyle MD. Special thank you to Lou Musa for the show theme music, created with Free Photography and makeup by Janae for the cover photo. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you haven't already, please subscribe today and share with another woman doctor who may benefit. You may also follow me on Instagram at Angela Lifestyle MD. I am Dr. Angela. Thank you for joining me today.